Hi, this is the Philosophical Angle program, and I'm your host, Chris Angle. The purpose of the Philosophical Angle program is to examine the nature of concepts and ideas in current media. I'm the author of 5 books on philosophy known as the Detmar-Haskell Dialogues, and they are The Nature of Aesthetics, The Nature of Ethics, The Nature of Truth, The Philosophical Equations of Economics, and The Nature of the Political Left and Right. And here is the latest book, and they are available anywhere books are sold, and The Nature of Aesthetics and the latest one, this one, The Nature of the Political Left and Right, are also available as an audiobook. And if you do a search for me, be sure to use my full name, Christopher Angle, as another fellow of the same name out there. So if you like our presentation and our subjects, please hit the like button, and subscribe, and comment. And so this week we're going to entitle our episode, "How Long Will the Iranian War Last?" So pretty much everybody's sitting around these days wondering when the Iranian war will end. Well, in order to predict this, we need to go over a few things that'll help us understand how long this will drag on or not drag on. Further, we need to go over the 7 dictums that dictate the essence of the haves throughout history. History has shown us that there are 7 principles by which all the kings and queens and totalitarians of history guided their behavior. These principles should be noted because they're going to allow us to understand why totalitarians and the kings and queens and the haves of history, why they have done what they have done, and why they will do what they do in the future. Then we can apply these 7 principles to the principal situation of the Iranian war, because Iran is governed by the haves, who are totalitarian. This Iranian totalitarian originates in their fundamental view of the Quran and the subsequent historical disputes of succession to whom should be given the right to lead the nation of Islam. So it should be noted that we're not going to discuss the attributes of the Quran and its hadith and its problematic discussion of Islamic succession, which are important points. But we're going to leave that aside, and we're just going to go over the 7 principles, which will just show us how a totalitarian thinks. And in this case, it's the Iranian mullahs, or single Ayatollah, or Ayatollah, however you pronounce that. So here we go. Principle number 1 is that all life does that which is good for it, and continually does that which is good for it, and tries to get more of that which is good for it. Principle number 2 is from St. Augustine, the theory of libido dominandi, which states that men tend to dominate. Just as in other advanced mammals, the males tend to fight it out to determine who is the leader of the group. Naturally, males do this in order to pass their genetics on to the next generation. Man seems to do the same thing. That is, man tries to dominate each other. We see this anthropologically in that when we were in tribes running around and running around in small groups, a leader would emerge. That leader would be perhaps a little smarter, a little more powerful, or have a little more intelligence, or whatever. And that person then, of course, being a leader, he will want a little more from society than the rest of the members in the group. As society grows, the leader gradually morphs into a king and with him there goes the queen. And so the kings and queens have dominated history and ruled over their have-nots for many thousands of years. As any society grows, the kings and queens need help, and so they hire an aristocracy. And when society gets even larger, they hire a group of functionaries to help them effectuate their edicts. So it should be noted at this point that principles 1 and 2 are the same for the haves as they are for the have-nots. And this is throughout history. The divergence comes at principle number 3. This principle says that the haves look at the have-nots as not having a good nature, that these have-nots are beneath the haves, that they are not good, and that the haves and their aristocracy, who are the good ones, they are good. And the have-nots will also look at the haves and decide that even though humans are not necessarily good, as we all fall short of the glory of God, but as the Apostle Paul said, we are to do good, and we are to do good as much as we can. And so they, the have-nots, will look upon each other and upon all people with whom they become associated and determine that there is some goodness within other human beings. And this goodness allows them to cooperate to produce goods and services, which brings us up away from misery. Now, we're going to proceed. Now, dictum 4 is the principle that was created in the 1820s, whereby the aristocratic Western Europeans sat around after the French Revolution and tried to figure out what should they do in order to prevent another French Revolution, like war, from developing and getting their heads cut off again. So they came up with the idea of noblesse oblige. That is the idea that the nobles should take care of the have-nots, at least to the extent that they can provide them a job which will give them income to make a living and provide them with food and drink and a base living. This thought turned into socialism, and then in 1848 the famous Communist Manifesto was written and published, and the idea of revolutionary socialism was developed. So, next up is principle number 5, which is the famous Lord Acton statement that power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is relevant to the haves in that when they become all powerful, like all the kings and queens throughout history, their minds become corrupted in the sense that only their priorities matter for the ruling of society. That is, a king will think of his priorities alone because he knows that he is all-powerful. And therefore he knows he does not have to cooperate with others. So his edicts are all that are to be adhered to and executed into society. So his priorities become the priorities of society. Whatever he thinks that should be best for society is that which will be effectuated into society. So this is totalitarianism. His mind becomes corrupted as he doesn't have to cooperate. He thinks only of himself. And all those with whom he does not have to cooperate, he looks down upon. And to wit, he can take people into war or destroy them without any thoughts, any second thoughts, any consideration of their well-being. So dictum 6 is the result of dictum 5. when you realize you don't have to cooperate with anybody else, you therefore don't have to have any ethics, because ethics is the appropriate dispensation of respect. And respect is the evolutionary means by which we are able to cooperate. And we cooperate to produce goods and services that bring us up away from misery and gives us goodness. And so the kings and queens of society, they don't have to cooperate. And thus, when they don't cooperate with others below them, the serfs, the proletariats, the slaves, their minds become so corrupted that they believe that only their priorities are important for society, and from that, the belief of the divine right of kings comes into their corrupted minds. And it's universal throughout history, in both the Western culture and even in the Far East. The kings and queens became so corrupted in their minds that they believed that they were God's conduit for what he wanted to be effectuated here on earth. That is, the kings thought that their edicts were nothing else but of that which God wants to happen on earth. So this brings us to the most important principle of all, principle number 6, which is that when you realize you don't have to cooperate, your sense of ethics disappears. Because when a totalitarian knows he doesn't have to cooperate, there is no ethics left. And when there is no ethics, then the only thing left is the end justifies the means. And so when we look at the totalitarian leaders all throughout history, right up to the present, they all believe that the end justifies the means, and this allows them to make horrendous, forceful decisions to compel society to make horrendous actions for the benefit of their own particular priorities. So you can look at Stalin and how many people he killed. How many people Stalin starved to death and killed. Look how many people Pol Pot of Cambodia killed. Who knows how many the leader in North Korea has executed members of his society. The point is that totalitarian leaders tend to do horrible things. And they don't give up because there is no motivation to give up, because they believe in their divine right to make their priorities and make their priorities to be the same as the priorities of society. So now, let's apply these 6 principles to the present day Iranian war. We have a totalitarian in place, whoever he might be at this point. He is the ultimate have. He believes that he is God's direct conduit for God's priorities to be put in action here on earth. His mind has been totally corrupted and no morals are left. And we can see that he has no morals left because he hangs and executes 35,000 or even maybe even more of his fellow countrymen just because they protested against his economic policies. Brutality. But in line with the past behavior of totalitarian leaders all throughout history. No difference. So what conclusion may we draw from this list of principles of how totalitarians act? Well, we can know that we can look at history and see what other totalitarian kings did when they were deposed by society's revolutionaries. What happens is that they will fight to the very last bitter end with no compromises. If we look into history, we can see, you look at King Charles I in 1649. Look at Hitler. They never stopped believing that it was only their priorities that were best for society. So we can expect the same from Iran. The only way that they will give up is if the present leaders are deposed by their society's denizens. They will not give up power until it is taken from them. In order for Iran to accept the destruction of their nuclear capabilities and ambitions, the seat of power must change from the fundamental Quranic beliefs of the Shia mullahs to the governance of a lay person, whether he be one of civil or military origins, but doesn't have the totalitarian beliefs of the fundamental Quranic message, so that they can take their Islamic hegemony and bring it abroad. Thank you for listening. See you next week on the Philosophical Angle program.